Hello, my name is Cece Smith, and I'll be doing my presentation on my favorite part of the brain, the amygdala. So, what is it? The amygdala is a group of neurons tucked deep within the temporal lobes, and you actually have two amygdalae, and they're almond-shaped, located on either side of the brain hemisphere, the left and the right. It's part of the limbic system, which is a part of our brain dealing largely with emotions and motivations. I just think it's so interesting that such a tiny, tiny little thing in our brain affects so much of who we are and how we act and what we do in our everyday lives all the time. So, what does it do? The main functions are emotional response, autonomic responses, especially fear, memory, arousal, and hormonal secretions. Growing up in classes, biology classes, and psych classes, we always learned about the amygdala as kind of the threat detector and how it was largely associated with fear. So that brings me to why that is. It's associated with fear because our fear response starts in the amygdala, and it then detects the emotional salience of the stimulus, whatever it is, and tells our brain and body how important it is for us to react to that and how we're going to respond to that, and if it is a potential threat for us for our own safety. So it is totally necessary in our daily life, even though fears can be annoying and troublesome. Something, though, that is not talked about as much is what I'm going to go through today. And like other brain parts, obviously there isn't just one function, but other very, very important ones. And the one I'll be talking about today is, sex. Sometimes I don't think it's really talked about enough, and how much the amygdala is involved with it. Sex is such a crucial part of our human functionality and doesn't get enough attention. So it's not only important in our lives, but all mammals, and show that the medial amygdala is associated with mediating sexual behavior. Different studies I've looked into have showed the lighting up, or lack thereof, the amygdala during sexual stimulation, which is physical and emotional connection you're making with someone. So it really makes sense that the emotional and motivational part of your brain is activated during this. Another interesting fact that I found was that in humans, it is the most sexually dimorphic brain structure and shrinks by more than 30% in males upon castration. The first study I found is a 2004 study, the amygdala and the human sex drive. So the amygdala volume was compared in groups with and without sex drive changes, after temporal lobe resection for epilepsy. So 45 subjects were age-matched with neurologically normal subjects, and their amygdala volume was measured before and after the procedure, or if they were the neurologically normal, no procedure, so just one measurement. And they wanted to see how their sex drive would change after some was resected. After this, patients reported their sex drive. If it had increased, decreased, stayed the same. And patients that reported increase had significantly larger amygdala volume, contralateral to the site of the resective surgery, than patients with sex decrease or no change than control people. So this really does show how amygdala volume is a big part of regulating human sexual behavior, and that the amygdala is very, very strongly correlated with our sex drive. The next study I found I thought was pretty interesting is a 2015 study by Dr. Eva Telzer, I think. She looked into cooties and crushes and how our amygdala activity causes this kind of to happen, which is interesting. I never really thought about the reason behind how cooties quickly develop into crushes. So they, via MRI, children young, they noticed, have a high amygdala activity, and they don't really pay much attention to being with the opposite sex. They're not averted by them. They just kind of act like everybody's the same. They play with whoever, and yeah. But then when you get to about 10 and 12 years old, the aversion starts. And same sex is preferred when hanging out and making friends, and that's when cooties is kind of comes about. And boys are like, ew, girls, and girls are, ew, boys. But then, quickly, from about 12 to 17, the amygdala activity rises again. And they start having crushes on the opposite sex and being more interested and being sexually interested and romantically interested in the opposite sex. So it's interesting to see how positively correlated our amygdala activity is with how interested we are in the opposite sex and having to do with our sex drive and how our body is maturing. So yeah, here are my sources. Thank you very much.